My ex still has a piece of my heart, she admitted. I replied, then go get the rest from him too. The look on her face when I didn't chase her was priceless. I should have known something was off when Miranda started asking hypothetical questions about soulmates and unfinished business during our morning coffee routine. I'm Colin, 28, work as an urban planning consultant here in Asheville, and I'd been with Miranda for almost 2 years. She was this vibrant pharmaceutical sales rep who could talk her way into any doctor's office and somehow made spreadsheets about drug interactions sound fascinating when she'd tell me about her day. We'd built this comfortable life together, the kind where you start planning anniversary trips 3 months in advance and arguing about whether to get premium cable or just stick with streaming services. I thought we were solid, building towards something permanent, maybe even looking at engagement rings after our upcoming Yellowstone trip that I'd been planning since January. Then she dropped the bomb on a Tuesday night while I was reviewing zoning proposals for a new sustainable housing development. Colin, I need to tell you something, and I don't want you to get upset. I looked up from my laptop, immediately knowing this wasn't going to be about whose turn it was to take out the trash. What's going on? I asked, setting aside my work completely because Miranda had that look, the one where she'd rehearsed whatever she was about to say. I've been thinking a lot about us, about my past, about whether I'm being completely honest with myself and with you. She sat down across from me, hands folded like she was delivering a medical diagnosis. I still have feelings for Wyatt. Wyatt, her ex from 2 years ago, the rock climbing instructor who'd basically lived out of his van and treated relationships like casual climbing partners you ditch when a better route opened up. Okay, I said slowly. What kind of feelings? I think there's still a piece of my heart with him, and I can't move forward with us until I have emotional clarity about what that means. The clinical way she said it made my stomach drop. This wasn't some random confession born from guilt or alcohol. This was calculated. So what are you saying exactly? I asked. I think we should take a break so I can figure out my heart. It's not fair to you to keep building something when I'm not completely present. 3 weeks before our Yellowstone trip. 3 weeks before what I'd hoped might be the perfect moment to propose, though I hadn't bought a ring yet because I'd been saving for the perfect one. How long is this break supposed to last? I asked, trying to keep my voice level. I don't know. However long it takes for me to get closure. She reached across the table like she was going to take my hand, then seemed to think better of it. This is about personal growth, Colin. I need to understand these feelings before I can fully commit to anyone. Personal growth. That night, after she'd gone to her friend's place to give me space to process, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying conversations, looking for signs I'd missed, wondering if I'd been blind to her unhappiness. Around 2 in the morning, I got up to get water and noticed her laptop was still open on the kitchen counter, logged into her Facebook account. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I looked. And what I found explained everything. Months of private messages with Wyatt through some rock climbing forum I'd never heard of. Messages that started innocent enough, congratulating him on some climbing achievement, then gradually became more personal. By last month, they were full-blown emotional affairs disguised as outdoor adventure planning. Colin's been great, but I feel like I'm living someone else's life, she'd written. Remember how alive I felt when we were together? Like I could conquer any mountain? His responses were textbook manipulation, telling her she deserved someone who understood her wild spirit, and that settling for stability was just fear disguising itself as maturity. The most recent exchange was from yesterday. Flights booked for Thursday. Can't wait to see you again. Colorado's going to remind you who you really are. She'd already planned to visit him in Boulder while feeding me lines about needing time to figure out her heart. When I confronted her the next morning, she didn't deny any of it. I was going to tell you about the trip, she said, which was obviously a lie. This is exactly why I need this break, Colin. You're checking my messages, acting possessive. Wyatt would never do that. Wyatt would never do that because Wyatt doesn't care enough about anyone to feel possessive, I replied. That's not who I want to be. What you want is to have your adventure without being honest about it, I said. If you need to go find yourself with your ex-boyfriend, then go. But don't insult my intelligence by calling it personal growth. She left the next day, claiming I was being unsupportive of her journey of self-discovery, like I was supposed to cheerfully fund her reunion with her ex and thank her for the privilege. Looking back, I should have noticed the changes sooner, but when you're living with someone every day, shifts happen gradually until suddenly you realize the person next to you has become a stranger. It started about a month ago when Miranda began taking phone calls in the bathroom, claiming they were work emergencies that required privacy because of HIPAA regulations, which seemed reasonable until I realized pharmaceutical sales reps don't typically handle patient information that would require such secrecy. Then there was the sudden interest in outdoor gear, browsing REI's website for hours and asking casual questions about climbing harnesses and technical jackets, explaining it away as wanting to try new activities together even though she'd never shown interest in anything more adventurous than hiking the easy trails around Asheville. The Wyatt references became constant background noise in our conversations, little comments about his latest climbing achievements that she'd somehow learned about, praising his fearlessness and dedication to living authentically, always contrasted against some subtle criticism of my more conventional lifestyle. Wyatt just completed this incredible multi-day climb in Joshua Tree, she'd say while I was meal prepping for the week. Can you imagine having that kind of freedom to just follow your passion wherever it leads? I'd started to feel like I was being compared to some impossible standard, measured against a man whose biggest responsibility was remembering which climbing gym had the best rates on Tuesday mornings. After she left for Boulder, I decided to do some investigating of my own, not out of jealousy but because I needed to understand what I'd apparently been too blind to see. Her laptop history told a story that made my stomach turn. Months of research into Colorado climbing routes, mountain weather patterns, and outdoor photography techniques, all while simultaneously booking couples therapy sessions with Dr. Peterson under the pretense of strengthening our relationship. She'd been planning this reunion while sitting in therapy sessions talking about our communication issues and commitment fears, nodding thoughtfully when Dr. Peterson suggested exercises for building trust and intimacy. The most damning evidence was in her email receipts, showing she'd used my REI membership to purchase over $800 worth of climbing equipment over the past 6 weeks, all shipped to her work address so I wouldn't see the deliveries. Dynamic ropes, climbing shoes in her size, a premium harness, technical outdoor clothing that cost more than my monthly car payment, all charged to the joint credit card we'd opened for shared expenses like groceries and utilities. When I'd asked about the unusual charges, she'd claimed it was gear for a surprise couples activity she was planning for our anniversary, something about getting me out of my comfort zone and connecting with nature together. I'd actually felt guilty for questioning her about the spending, thinking I was being controlling instead of recognizing I was funding her a fair preparation. The private messages I'd discovered went back 4 months, starting innocently enough with Miranda congratulating Wyatt on some climbing competition he'd won, then evolving into increasingly personal exchanges about their shared memories and his philosophy about living without compromise. "I miss feeling like I could be spontaneous," she'd written. "Colin's great, but everything has to be planned and analyzed. Sometimes I feel like I'm suffocating in all his stability." His responses were perfectly crafted to feed her dissatisfaction, telling her that security was just another word for settling, that her corporate job and domestic relationship were killing the adventurous spirit he'd fallen in love with years ago. "You used to be fearless," he'd written. "Don't let anyone convince you that playing it safe is the same thing as being happy." By March, their conversations had turned explicitly romantic, with Wyatt describing elaborate outdoor adventures they could share if she ever decided to prioritize her authentic self over societal expectations of what a successful woman should want. He'd painted pictures of sunrise climbs and campfire conversations under star-filled skies, positioning himself as the gateway to a life of meaning and adventure that I apparently couldn't provide. The final exchange, sent just 2 days before her confession, was Wyatt confirming logistics for her visit and telling her that seeing her again would prove whether what they'd had was real or just nostalgia, like he was offering her some kind of cosmic test for true love. Miranda had responded with excitement about finally feeling like myself again and anticipation for remembering what it feels like to live without limits. Reading those messages felt like discovering I'd been married to a stranger who'd been systematically planning her exit while maintaining the facade of working on our relationship together. Miranda's social media transformation began the moment her plane landed in Denver, and watching it unfold was like witnessing someone create a completely fictional version of their life in real time. Her Instagram, which had previously featured the occasional dinner photo or work conference selfie, suddenly became this carefully curated mountain adventure showcase that looked like something from an outdoor gear catalog. Within hours of arriving in Boulder, she was posting action shots of herself rappelling down cliff faces with captions about reconnecting with her wild spirit and remembering what it feels like to be truly alive. Every photo featured Wyatt in some capacity, either as her climbing partner or as the photographer capturing her supposed transformation, and the captions became increasingly philosophical about authentic living and following your heart. "Sometimes you have to risk everything comfortable to find everything real," she wrote under a sunset photo of them sharing a campfire. "The mountains don't lie to you about who you're meant to be." The passive-aggressive targeting was obvious to anyone who knew our relationship history, especially when she posted quotes about settling for safe relationships and how some people choose security over passion like it's a virtue instead of a fear. She shared inspirational content about women who'd left conventional lives to pursue adventure, always with commentary about how society pressures people to prioritize stability over happiness, clearly positioning herself as some kind of feminist hero for abandoning our relationship. The most infuriating posts were the ones where she positioned Wyatt as her spiritual guide, praising his wisdom about living without regrets and his ability to see through societal conditioning that keeps people trapped in unfulfilling situations. "Some people are put in your life to show you possibilities you never imagined," she wrote alongside a photo of them conquering some difficult climbing route. "Grateful for guides who remind you that your dreams are valid and your spirit deserves freedom." I learned more about Miranda's campaign against me through Rebecca, her friend from the climbing gym who'd apparently grown tired of being used as a sounding board for relationship complaints. Rebecca called me 3 days into Miranda's Boulder adventure, ostensibly to check on how I was handling the breakup but really to share information she thought I deserved to know. "She's been telling everyone you were holding her back from her true passion," Rebecca said during our awkward coffee meeting. "According to Miranda, you were this controlling boyfriend who couldn't handle dating a woman with adventurous dreams." Rebecca explained that Miranda had been rewriting our entire relationship history, claiming I'd actively discouraged her climbing interests and made her feel guilty for wanting outdoor adventures, which was complete fabrication since she'd never expressed interest in climbing until Wyatt reappeared in her life. She'd been telling people at the gym that I was threatened by her independence and that our relationship had become suffocating because I needed to plan every moment instead of embracing spontaneity. "The weird thing is," Rebecca continued, "she never seemed unhappy when she talked about you before this Wyatt situation started. She used to brag about how reliable you were, how you actually followed through on plans and treated her well. It's like she's convinced herself that stability equals oppression so she can justify whatever she's doing in Colorado." But the most revealing information came from Harper, Miranda's former college roommate who reached out after seeing the social media posts and recognizing the familiar pattern. Harper called me completely out of the blue, introducing herself as someone who'd heard wonderful things about me from Miranda during happier times and felt compelled to reach out after witnessing what she called Miranda's greatest hits album playing out online. "I lived with her for 2 years at UNC," Harper explained during our phone conversation. "She pulled this exact same routine with her boyfriend junior year, built up this fantasy about her high school ex being her soulmate while systematically sabotaging her current relationship." Harper described Miranda's pattern of romanticizing past relationships whenever her current situation required actual commitment or compromise, always positioning her ex as some kind of free spirit who understood her authentic self better than whatever stable partner she was currently with. "She's not remembering her relationship with Wyatt accurately," Harper said. "I was there when they were together, and he was chronically unemployed, emotionally unavailable, and treated her like a convenient climbing partner with benefits. She spent most of their relationship crying about his inability to commit or discuss the future, but apparently that's been rewritten as him being refreshingly spontaneous and emotionally honest." Harper's phone call evolved from a courtesy check-in to genuine connection over the course of several conversations, and I found myself looking forward to talking with someone who understood Miranda's manipulative patterns without making excuses for her behavior. Harper worked as a landscape architect in Charlotte, designing sustainable outdoor spaces for corporate campuses and residential developments, and her insights into both human nature and environmental planning created fascinating conversations that reminded me why I'd gotten into urban development in the first place. She shared stories about Miranda's college behavior that revealed a consistent pattern of emotional manipulation and relationship sabotage, always executed when things got serious enough to require actual commitment or personal growth. She did this to Marcus her junior year, Harper explained during one of our evening calls. Great guy, pre-med student, absolutely devoted to her, but the moment he started talking about spending the summer together instead of her going home to work at her dad's office, suddenly her high school boyfriend became the great love of her life that she'd abandoned for the wrong reasons. Harper described watching Miranda systematically destroy a healthy relationship by manufacturing dissatisfaction and creating impossible comparisons to idealized past experiences, always positioning herself as the victim of circumstances rather than the architect of her own drama. What impressed me most about Harper was her refusal to badmouth Miranda despite having every reason to hold grudges, instead offering analytical observations about patterns and behaviors like a scientist studying predictable phenomena. Our conversations gradually shifted from Miranda analysis to genuine personal connection as Harper shared her own relationship experiences and professional challenges, and I realized I was talking to someone whose intelligence and emotional maturity made Miranda seem like a teenager by comparison. Harper suggested we plan a weekend camping trip to Great Smoky Mountains, not as some kind of revenge against Miranda but as a way for me to reclaim my own relationship with nature that Miranda had been claiming as exclusively her domain through her Colorado social media campaign. "Don't let her steal outdoor adventures from you," Harper said. "You were hiking and camping long before she decided mountains were her spiritual calling, and you shouldn't abandon things you love just because she's currently using them as props for her personal drama." Planning that trip with Harper felt completely different from any outdoor activity I'd organized with Miranda, mainly because Harper approached it as a collaborative effort rather than an opportunity for Instagram content creation. She researched trails based on scenic value and difficulty level rather than photogenic potential, packed practical gear instead of designer outdoor fashion, and seemed genuinely excited about the experience itself rather than how it would look to outside observers. During our 3-day camping trip in late April, I rediscovered why I'd originally fallen in love with outdoor activities before Miranda had made me feel like my appreciation for nature was somehow inadequate compared to Wyatt's extreme climbing adventures. Harper and I hiked moderate trails during the day, cooked simple meals over our camp stove, and spent evening hours talking about everything from sustainable development practices to childhood memories of family camping trips, conversations that felt natural and unforced instead of performed for social media documentation. On our final night, while we were sitting around the campfire watching stars emerge in the clear mountain sky, Harper mentioned something that shifted our dynamic completely. "I need to confess something," she said, looking slightly embarrassed. "I didn't just call you because I felt sorry about Miranda's behavior. I'd always wondered what you were really like, based on how she talked about you during the good times." She explained that Miranda had spent months during their friendship describing me as this incredibly thoughtful and reliable partner who planned thoughtful surprises and actually followed through on commitments, qualities that Harper found appealing after her own experiences with flaky and self-centered men. She used to complain that her previous boyfriends were all style and no substance, Harper continued, but then she'd tell stories about how you remembered things that mattered to her and put effort into making her feel special. I remember thinking she was lucky to find someone who actually cared about her happiness. The irony wasn't lost on me that Miranda had been praising my stability and thoughtfulness to Harper while simultaneously complaining to Wyatt that those same qualities made me boring and suffocating, apparently tailoring her narrative to whatever audience would validate her current emotional needs. That night, Harper and I shared our first kiss, and it felt like the most natural progression in the world rather than some dramatic romantic revelation that needed to be documented and analyzed for deeper meaning. Miranda's Colorado spiritual awakening came to an abrupt halt when reality crashed into her carefully constructed fantasy, and the aftermath was more satisfying than any revenge I could have planned myself. According to Rebecca, who maintained contact with mutual climbing friends in Boulder, Wyatt's ex-wife returned from her military deployment in Germany 2 weeks into Miranda's visit, bringing their 8-year-old daughter and immediately reclaiming her place in Wyatt's life and living situation. Apparently, Wyatt had conveniently forgotten to mention that his divorce wasn't actually finalized and that his ex-wife's deployment was temporary rather than permanent, details that might have complicated Miranda's narrative about finding her authentic soulmate. Rebecca learned through the climbing community gossip network that Wyatt had been telling his Boulder friends Miranda was a desperate divorcee from North Carolina, who was funding their outdoor adventures in exchange for climbing instruction and companionship, positioning himself as some kind of charitable guide helping a lonely woman rediscover her confidence. The expensive gear Miranda had purchased with our joint credit card became Wyatt's equipment collection, and she'd been paying for their mountain lodge accommodations, premium camping gear, and elaborate restaurant meals while believing she was investing in their romantic reunion. When his ex-wife Sarah returned with their daughter, Wyatt immediately reverted to devoted family man mode, explaining to Miranda that their reunion had been a temporary exploration of old feelings that helped him realize his true priorities lay with his actual family obligations. "You helped me understand that what Sarah and I have is real," he'd apparently told Miranda, according to the story that made its rounds through the climbing gym network. "Sometimes you need to revisit the past to appreciate the present." Miranda returned to Asheville 3 days earlier than planned, discovered my apartment completely cleared of my belongings, and found a note I'd left suggesting she continue following her authentic path since she'd been so convinced that stability was holding her back from her true potential. I'd moved into a furnished temporary rental while I looked for a permanent place, taking everything that belonged to me and leaving behind only the climbing equipment she'd purchased and a few items that reminded me of our relationship. The note was simple and factual, wishing her well in her journey of self-discovery and suggesting she keep the gear since outdoor adventures were apparently her newfound passion. Her first attempt at reconciliation came through a series of increasingly frantic text messages that revealed how completely unprepared she was for the consequences of her choices. "Colin, we need to talk immediately. I made a huge mistake and I need to explain everything." When I didn't respond within an hour, the messages escalated to accusations mixed with desperation. "You can't just disappear without giving me a chance to apologize. What happened with Wyatt wasn't what I expected and I realize now that I was confused about what I actually wanted." My eventual response was brief and final: "You got exactly what you asked for. Time to figure out your heart without me waiting around for the results." The real drama began when Miranda discovered through our mutual friend network that Harper and I had been spending time together, information that she received about as well as you'd expect from someone who'd convinced herself that I'd be pining away while she explored her options. Miranda's friend Ashley made the mistake of mentioning that she'd seen Harper and me together at a farmer's market in Asheville, assuming Miranda would want to know that I was doing well and moving forward with my life. Miranda's response was to immediately drive to Harper's apartment complex and confront her in the parking lot, accusing her of manipulating the situation and deliberately sabotaging our relationship for her own benefit. "You waited until I was vulnerable and confused, then swooped in to steal my boyfriend," Miranda allegedly screamed, according to Harper's account of the encounter. "You probably planned this whole thing from the beginning, feeding him lies about me so you could position yourself as the better option." Harper's calm response that she'd simply offered friendship to someone who'd been treated badly only enraged Miranda further, leading to threats about exposing Harper's home-wrecking behavior to our entire social circle and professional networks. The confrontation ended with Harper suggesting Miranda focus her energy on understanding why she'd sabotaged her own relationship rather than blaming other people for the consequences of her choices, advice that Miranda received about as graciously as expected. Miranda's revenge campaign escalated beyond personal drama into genuine harassment that backfired spectacularly and revealed the full extent of her entitlement and poor judgment to everyone in our social circle. Her first move was canceling every reservation I'd made using her credit card information, including our anniversary dinner at Grove Park Inn and the couple's massage package I'd booked for her birthday, apparently believing this would somehow punish me for moving on rather than simply eliminating expenses I was no longer responsible for paying. She spread rumors through her pharmaceutical sales network that Harper had deliberately pursued me while Miranda was going through a difficult time, and that Harper's landscape architecture firm was somehow involved in sabotaging Miranda's relationship through professional connections, stories so elaborate and nonsensical that they actually made Harper seem more impressive rather than villainous. The social media campaign included creating fake reviews for my urban planning firm claiming we discriminated against outdoor enthusiasts and prioritized corporate development over environmental conservation, accusations that were easily disproven but required time and energy to address through proper channels. Miranda's most spectacular public meltdown occurred when Harper and I were having dinner at Curate, this upscale Spanish restaurant in downtown Asheville that Harper had chosen to celebrate her recent promotion to senior landscape architect at her firm. We were enjoying tapas and discussing Harper's new project designing sustainable green spaces for a major hospital campus when Miranda appeared at our table carrying a duffel bag full of climbing gear like she was presenting evidence at a criminal trial. "I need everyone here to see what kind of man Colin really is," she announced loudly enough for the entire restaurant to hear, pulling out the expensive climbing equipment she'd purchased months earlier. "He stole my passion for outdoor adventures and corrupted my best friend against me to cover up his own emotional inadequacy." The scene was surreal, watching someone I'd once loved completely humiliate herself in front of strangers while making accusations that made no logical sense even by her own twisted narrative standards. Harper remained perfectly calm throughout the entire performance, occasionally sipping her wine while Miranda ranted about betrayal and manipulation, which only seemed to frustrate Miranda more since she'd clearly expected tears or defensiveness. The restaurant manager approached after other diners began complaining about the disruption, and that's when several people at nearby tables started recognizing Miranda from her viral Colorado Instagram posts, with one couple actually taking photos while commenting on the irony of her current behavior versus her online persona about authentic living and spiritual growth. The situation became even more embarrassing when Harper calmly mentioned that she'd actually designed Curate's outdoor seating area 3 years earlier, long before she'd ever met me, completely debunking Miranda's conspiracy theory about our professional connections being part of some elaborate scheme to destroy her relationship. "I'm sorry you're going through a difficult time," Harper told Miranda with genuine compassion that made Miranda's accusations seem even more unhinged, "but Colin and I didn't plan anything except enjoying dinner together. You're welcome to keep the climbing gear since you seemed so passionate about outdoor adventures." Miranda's response was to dump the contents of the duffel bag onto our table, creating a scene so chaotic and inappropriate that restaurant security was called to escort her from the premises while other diners filmed the entire incident for social media documentation. The fallout from her public meltdown extended beyond social embarrassment into professional consequences that Miranda apparently hadn't considered before launching her campaign of harassment and revenge. Her pharmaceutical sales clients began receiving complaints about her erratic behavior from doctors' offices where she'd been ranting about personal relationship drama instead of discussing medical products, leading to formal reprimands from her employer about maintaining professional boundaries and appropriate workplace conduct. The climbing gym where she'd been spreading rumors about Harper and me eventually banned her from the premises after multiple members complained about being subjected to unsolicited relationship advice and conspiracy theories during what should have been relaxing recreational activities, effectively cutting off her access to the outdoor community she'd claimed was central to her authentic identity. Miranda's final desperate move came exactly 6 months after our breakup, when Harper and I were celebrating our relationship milestone at a house party thrown by our mutual friend David, surrounded by people who'd witnessed Miranda's entire dramatic arc and had zero patience for additional theatrics. We were enjoying conversations about Harper's latest sustainable design project and my promotion to senior urban planning consultant when Miranda appeared in David's living room like a ghost from someone else's past, wearing an expensive dress that probably cost more than her monthly rent and carrying herself with forced confidence that fooled absolutely no one present. "I need to talk to Colin privately," she announced to the room, ignoring Harper completely and positioning herself between us like she had some kind of legal right to interrupt our evening. "There's something important I need to say." David immediately stepped forward to suggest Miranda might want to call ahead next time, but I decided to let her have her moment since everyone present had earned the entertainment value of watching her final performance. "What's so important, Miranda?" I asked, genuinely curious about what new manipulation technique she'd developed over the past few months of radio silence. I've spent 6 months thinking about us, about what I lost when I chose adventure over stability, she began, launching into what was clearly a rehearsed speech about personal growth and life lessons learned through hardship. I realize now that you were the one, Colin. Everything I thought I wanted with Wyatt was just me testing our connection, trying to make sure what we had was real before committing completely. The audacity was breathtaking, watching her rewrite history in real time while surrounded by people who'd witnessed her systematic destruction of our relationship and subsequent harassment campaign against Harper and me. She continued with increasing emotional intensity, claiming that her piece of my heart had been calling her back to fight for our future, that she'd learned to appreciate my reliability and thoughtfulness after experiencing Wyatt's emotional unavailability firsthand. I know I hurt you terribly, she said, tears starting to flow in what appeared to be genuine emotion, but I also know that what we built together was too important to abandon without a real fight. I'm here to fight for us, Colin. I'm here to prove that I've changed and that I understand now what really matters. The room had gone completely silent, everyone watching this drama unfold like we were witnessing some kind of performance art piece about delusion and entitlement, waiting to see how I'd respond to this masterclass in manipulation disguised as romantic gesture. Miranda, I said calmly, taking Harper's hand while looking directly into Miranda's eyes, if you still have a piece of my heart, then you should go get the rest from Wyatt too, because that's where you decided it belonged when you chose adventure over what we had. The look on her face was absolutely priceless, cycling through confusion, disbelief, anger, and finally understanding that I wasn't playing the role she'd assigned me in her redemption fantasy. You can't be serious, she whispered, probably expecting me to break character and admit this was all some elaborate test of her commitment to winning me back. I'm completely serious, I replied. You made your choice 6 months ago when you decided I wasn't enough. Harper and I are building something real together, something based on mutual respect rather than manufactured drama. The public rejection, delivered in front of friends who'd watched her entire manipulative performance, finally forced Miranda to confront the reality that her actions had permanent consequences and that some bridges can't be rebuilt through tears and desperate speeches. She left the party in complete humiliation, her dramatic exit punctuated by David's comment that maybe she should focus on her new climbing hobby instead of disrupting other people's happiness, a suggestion that sent ripples of laughter through the room since everyone knew about her recent climbing gym banishment. Within 2 months, Miranda had lost her pharmaceutical sales job due to continued erratic behavior and professional complaints, been evicted from her apartment for non-payment of rent, and moved back to her childhood home in rural Virginia where her parents could supervise her recovery from what they diplomatically described as a quarter-life crisis. Harper and I, meanwhile, had discovered that our professional skills complemented each other perfectly, leading to collaborative consulting work that combined my urban planning expertise with her landscape architecture background to create sustainable community development projects that were both environmentally responsible and economically viable. 1 year after Miranda's dramatic exit from our lives, Harper and I got engaged during a quiet camping trip to the same spot in Great Smoky Mountains where we'd first kissed, and 6 months later we launched our own consulting firm specializing in eco-friendly housing developments that prioritized both human community and environmental stewardship. Our success wasn't built on dramatic gestures or manufactured excitement, but on the foundation of mutual respect, shared values, and genuine partnership that Miranda had never understood was possible, let alone valuable enough to choose over the temporary thrill of manufactured adventure and artificial drama.